Welcome to this week's Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield on the Rural Radio Network. Tail wagging the dog. I like that description that Brad gave us as we look at these markets. And again, another week where we've got some frustration that continues to take place. We're going to follow up on some discussions we had last week as we looked at the drop within this marketplace. And as we are recording this on a Wednesday, as a session is getting ready to wrap up, we still have that big negative feel going on in that live cattle market. We're going to get all the details today from Brad Kooima, as I mentioned. Brad is with Kooima Kooima Varilek out of Sioux Center, Iowa. So market does, as you said, this every so often, but we just seem to be stuck in this groundhog type of day trade.
Thanks for having me on. This is my favorite show to be on, because you let me let my hair down. So today I'm going to start with, I'm not drunk, okay, but I really have the hiccups.
You do, and unfortunately.
I apologize to your people who I've had them for a whole day since yesterday at this time. So I think what's happening is when cattle futures sell off, who cares about the rest of the markets anyway, right?
Right.
I must be allergic to gives me hiccups or something. So seriously, the markets often do not offer a great explanation, at least for me. Maybe the next guy will have one. Again, I mean, there's plenty of things that I've heard, listened to, questioned in my own mind. Some of this is political. I know some people worried about, some of the statements made by the Democratic candidate about we got to stop inflation by making sure there isn't any price gouging, mentioning meat specifically. This, by the way, is a horrible idea. Harken back to 1973. See how that worked out for us, guys. Price gouging, give me a break. This is this. Were we around in COVID? I was getting 90 cents for cattle and box beef went to $4.62. If you want to talk about price gouging, then this is a little late to the party. The retail price of beef, I can show you the survey if you'd like. I get it every Thursday. The 13 biggest cities where they average every random cut, but the middle cuts, the cuts we care about, right? Typically the ribeyes, the loin, the sirloin, with almost out exception, the average price of those per pound is less than a year ago. Anyway, so there was what did that mean to the markets? I apologize. Well, some people thought, well, the long speculator, the fund manager, he's not going to want to be long anything that they're going to try to do price controls on. And I guess I wouldn't either, but I know it's August. Even if she gets elected, that it's not till January. And I can't really quite see how the system's going to allow for that kind of a radical price approach. So you had that. You had to worry about the Great Recession, right? And now you got the stock market higher than it's been in 7 weeks, or just up against the old highs here. So I don't know that that's a worry either. But once you destroy the confidence, once you get a crack in the dam, right? Then to stop the water from gushing. And algorithms are part of this story too, as well, I think, Susan.
I was going to ask you about that with those algorithms. You talk about it being a big part of it. I mean, we know that they're there in this trade, but it just seems like they've stirred the pot a little bit to cause what we're seeing in this negative free fall.
Well, I can't prove it. You're getting one person's opinion, okay? And there's no way I can prove this, but because there's no transparency anymore. When there was a pit, everybody knew what everybody was doing. But it seems to us that when you watch the volatility and watch the patterning in the market, the volume has not been heavy the last 2 weeks, and the open interest really hasn't appreciably changed. So you'd say, well, that's odd, because typically on a big break like that, it's the longs that say, I give up, throw in the towel, and the open interest goes down, right? Or you'll get an increase in open interest perhaps from a bunch of new hedgers. But algorithms basically are in and out of the market the same day. I put algorithms, HFT, it's the same group, it's the same community, where they seem to prey on this kind of a market where if they sell enough that they can spook a much more selling, and then they cover their shorts on that break. And I don't know that has much to do with price discovery. I get it, it's America, but this does seem to be that a bit of an abuse in a market that's maybe too thin to handle the kind of volume that they're throwing at it.
So as you take a look, and I want to kind of rewind a little bit to last week's comments, because we did get a lot of comments that came in on the whole avian influenza testing that's going to happen. And as one person wrote, bird flew over the cuckoo's nest. There's a lot of frustration from the cattle industry as you look at money not there, but money there to do some testing, and they wonder about the value of their industry when it comes to this reporting.
Susan, I don't know if you could find a person that's more agitated or empathetic to the cause. Partly because I'm engaged in it, and partly because I know more than sometimes. The more you know, the more disgusted you get. Maybe I was too strong last week, but I mean, I was quoted those numbers by a USDA guy. He's not a bad guy. I know a lot of USDA people, and they're great people, but their methodology sucks. I mean, it's the fact that we're going to test a product that's perfectly safe for what reason? And I can't figure out why we can't get better industry leadership to knock this down. I think the USDA's got to be a bigger part of the deal. And I get it. They've got a million things to do. They don't have a farm bill, for goodness sake, let alone worrying about this sort of thing. So the politics thing is very, very frustrating to me. I'll keep hollering. And I actually did a bit of it this morning again. My group is NCBA. If your group is another one, good for you. But make your voice heard and try to work to affect change. Don't give up. But yeah, to look at that, the irony of your question though. So yes. Today's low on October cattle futures is within a few cents of the low that we made on the third day of testing. Remember that back then, in the late April when they decided to test beef for bird flu. 3 days of testing, and oh no, we're going to find it. Then finally out, they came out, well, no, actually everything's cool, right? And then we came ripping out of there and went straight up. So we're right back to those levels again. Thank you very much.
So it kind of leads to the fact that consumer confidence in our beef industry has not waned during all of this avian influenza bird flu testing. We know that grounds, for example, are definitely continue to pick up momentum.
Yeah, I think that part I'm very happy with. It. I worry that some of the consumers are believe whatever they got told last, right? If they, hopefully, we can do a good job of educating. I mean, this is a product that we cook, right? It doesn't really show that it's made this jump at all. I think that the bigger concern here probably would be a deep recession. I mean, if you're going to talk about, a long-term worry on the cattle, that's more like it in my opinion. But I can't predict that, and I've been hearing about it since this administration came in office 3.5 years ago that we're going to have it. So, excuse me, it's annoying. That's hiccuping. I apologize. Okay. But so that's demand, and it's hard to project, impossible. I know what the supply is. The supply is going to get tighter and tighter as we go into the fourth quarter. So I think that reference that I made last week and maybe the week before to that steep break that we had in 2014, where futures broke $15, which by the way, that's almost exactly what October cattle just broke too, and then only to come ripping back there once we put that low in late August in 14. So I choose to think maybe we're getting close, but we'll see. We'll see. I'd like to see a little better close than we're getting here. We're 90 lower with about a minute or so to go.
So do we have the lows in place, or can we hope the lows are in for the live cattle?
I can't confidently say that we've got the lows in because we're just not having the action. I like the feeder cattle futures action today because they showed some leadership for the first time, and that's what they should do. But I think I probably need to get October cattle back on top of 175.75 for me to feel like you had a technical signal for that. But that's not so far away. But we'll see tomorrow. We need to see a little bit of leadership out of the cash too, because your tail wagging the dog statement to start it out is really a problem. Futures broke and then the cash did, not the other way around. So maybe we can stabilize the cash and maybe work on the other end of the market.
But definitely, as we wrap this up, positive though for the feeder cattle, definitely different than what we saw in their trade just a week ago.
For sure. Yeah. A nice 100 higher deal on the feeder cattle trading underneath the index. And anybody that's been to a sale barn is kind of going like, well, geez, the real feeder cattle aren't that much cheaper and not the way the futures have broke. So some of the feeder cattle months are $45 off of contract highs. $45. That's a pretty good poke.
Well, we're going to let you rest because those hiccups are taking over on you. Best way for folks to get a hold of you?
Actually, they should call with whatever their home remedy for this is. 712-722-0023 or excuse me, kkvtrading.com. I apologize. I got better manners than this, but I can't help it.
Can't help hiccups. I totally get that. Just a quick reminder to folks, commodity futures and options do involve a substantial risk of loss, not suitable to all investors. And that's this week's Cattle Call on the Rural Radio Network.